Hello, I'm Brian from the channel Brian. Ugh. I saw Mulan. Don't worry, I didn't give Disney or this pro-Hong Kong police actress $30 of my own money because this is finally on Redbox, so I can watch it for just $1. And all I can say is thank f*** I didn't. This movie is terrible. The best thing I can say about this movie is that it doesn't feel like the filmmakers were actively trying to miss the point of every scene from the original like The Lion King and Beauty and the Beast ones. And even that faint praise is only because most of the original movie was gutted into oblivion, and I guess it's not as visually unappealing as those two. But I have the presence of mind that whatever points Mulan could possibly scrounge up in its favor comes solely through comparison to these other abysmal remakes, and would only ever be the difference between it being a 2 instead of a 1. You cannot approach Disney live-action remakes the way you do most movies. This is a unique phenomenon where your bright spots are simply what wasn't f***ed to the point of offending you. They are a misanthropic exercise in film criticism where you go in wondering, will this merely be bad or one of the worst movies of the decade? Let's find out which one Mulan is. Let's first discuss the many memorable things from the original that are just straight up gone now. Whether it's Shang, Mushu, the songs, the ancestor spirit people, each of these things that gave the original a ton of personality. I mean, what kind of sick person do you have to be to think Mulan is lent more artistic potential by taking away Make a Man out of you? That's like a top 5 Disney song without even having to think about it. Remakes oftentimes stumble in managing how much to stand on their own versus borrowing from the original. You could strip all this away in theory, but Mulan's problem is that it does not replace them with anything. At least not anything worthwhile. What little they do keep is dialed back so far with only throwaway lines as lip service lyrical references or vague character similarities. It does that thing where, oh, this might not technically be Shang, but he fills the same role, so we didn't technically get rid of what you liked. But everything we actually liked about Shang is not present in this character. And Mulan's not long. With all the time dedicated to these characters, you'd think removing them without adequate replacements would give you a severe running time problem. But no, this remake is somehow 30 minutes longer. The most baffling part of these remakes continues to be how they manage to spend more time to give the audience less information. To the film's credit, there is one new character, but what she adds is hardly enough to supplement the time that's no longer needed for developing the removed characters, let alone the 30 minutes they somehow added on top of that. What exactly is the film spending its time doing? The excuse with Mulan is Disney was trying to stick closer to the source material. And already that's a little shady, because the poem they're trying to remain truer to is only about 40 lines long and has very few actual plot details. This rings just as transparent as The Lion King's dedication to realism. Were you trying to be truer to the source material when you threw in a lady who can use magic and turn into a bird? Yes, there are a few more references to the poem you'll catch if you've read it, but overall, enough of the story remained the same to the 1998 version where getting rid of characters and songs is just laziness. You could either spend money hiring more actors, recomposing the songs, and elaborately shooting musical sequences, or you could not do those things and save both time and money by hiding behind flimsy fronts of artistic integrity. The uncanny space between looking expensive and cheap these remakes have always existed in is super prominent here. The budget is kind of on display, but there is still that cheap edge to it. Mulan has a budget of $200 million, and it looks worse than a single episode of Game of Thrones, which even at its most expensive cost less than 10% of that on average. The lighting is so blown out that it gives the entire film a non-human quality. If you told me this was cutscenes from a new PS5 Dynasty Warriors game, I'd probably believe you. Especially during the fight sequences, you can really see the film bursting at the seams as the editing tries its absolute hardest to hide the ineptitude on display here. Typically, fight scenes are cut to shit because the actors can't do the moves, but you have Donnie Yen, the fucking IP man, in this. I guarantee you Disney is not creative enough to come up with choreography Donnie Yen can't do. And like every sweeping camera movement through the landscapes is so haphazard, it's easy to look at cinematography and take it for granted because, hey, it's a movie, and whatever they're showing to you, you're meant to see. But if you step outside that for a second and realize somebody had to actually, film it physically, you'll feel the uncertainty in how far the camera operator felt like they were supposed to move. As is the case with all of these remakes, the character motivations and developments are overly simplified versions of the original, at least those of the characters that remain. Mulan's not an interesting character here. The central conflict of Mulan concealing her identity because of gender inequality is the only thing this remake has to offer when swaths of the animated version expanded on this concept in her attempts to blend in. These were not only funny, but they often showed us who the characters involved were, and were integral to the film's commentary. The original Mulan is a movie that handles female empowerment more respectfully than almost every blockbuster in the past decade that's tried it. It knew when to have characters embody the broader misogyny of her culture based on the situation as well as what was narratively satisfying. Deeply entrenched as sexism may be, it manifests in more ways than bluntly telling women they can't do things, which is all the remakes set on Mulan overcoming. While the point of the story is Mulan being just as capable a soldier as any of her male compatriots, she is, in essence, an underdog. The system's already against her. She doesn't really get how to perform as a man, and she doesn't start out any better of a warrior than anybody else. But she grows by the end of the film. It's not enough that remake Mulan is an expert warrior from quite literally the first minute of the movie, but she knows how to use chi, which lets her move like she's from Naruto, and she has a phoenix spirit as her guardian angel. Slight diatribe, but the phoenix isn't even from Chinese folklore. There's the Fenghuan, or the vermilion bird, but it's just another reason of why it's fraudulent and irresponsible for these filmmakers to claim they're trying to make this movie truer to the source material. Anyways, Mulan is already the super strongest special person in the whole world. The most internal conflict she faces is being upset with herself for lying about who she is, which barely constitutes a flaw because she's only lying out of clearly defined external necessity. There are no personal obstacles for her to overcome. She doesn't really change. She doesn't learn anything. She doesn't even really get any stronger. It's like for all the people who hated Rey, this is the character they see. There are a few terms and phrases that are used more inappropriately and I personally loathe more than Mary Sue, but for Mulan, there really is no other description I can think of. It's like they think if Mulan has any shortcomings that come from within, then she's not a strong woman. And this just isn't true. What are you teaching young girls that if you struggle at all, then you aren't really a hero? That's not just horribly reductive commentary, that's something that will cause real harm to people. So this movie's not good. Somehow it's still not as excruciating an exercise in patience as the worst of these remakes, but again, only because the remotest few aspects aren't the worst I've seen them done in like 3 years. I'm thinking like a 1 for Mulan. Total, vacuous, bankrupt, trash, 1 for Mulan. Anyway, did you like this movie more than me? I hope not. And if you like words in the way I say them, please consider subscribing to me, Brian from the channel Brian. Thanks, goodbye.